Welcome to Media Makers Spotlight from Women in Film and Video in Washington, D.C. We bring you conversations with industry professionals for behind the screens, insight, and inspiration.
In this episode of Media Makers Spotlight, my guest describes herself as a visual archeologist. If you're not sure what that means, stay tuned to learn more. I'm your host, Sandra Abrams, and I'm chatting with Monda Raquel Webb. She's an award-winning author, filmmaker, and performance artist, and owns Little Known Stories Production. She's a Women in Film and Video board member and a former executive VP of WIFV, as well as a member of the AKA sorority. She is the author of several books. Her film projects include Zoo, Valkershin, and Pooch Sitter. Both have won over 40 awards. Monda has two current projects, Mother Knows Best and Portraits in Black, honoring our national treasures, and we'll talk about them later. Earlier this year, Monda won the Trailblazer Award from the African American Women in Cinema in New York City, and she has received many honors over the years. Monda, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. I am delighted to be here and honored, so thank you.
Well, one of the things I didn't mention in your intro was you went to the University of Rhode Island. So I'm wondering, how did you end up here in the DMV?
Well, I was raised here primarily. So I spent my elementary and middle school years and high school here in Montgomery County in Silver Spring, Maryland. And I received a basketball scholarship to the University of Rhode Island. And it was a great 4 years, but I was definitely ready to come back home.
Love the fact that you're a local person and you're supporting the DMV once again. That's wonderful. But one of the things I talked about, I said in the beginning, visual archaeologist. So what does that really mean?
For me, it's storytelling where you use all of your senses to hear, feel, see, touch, to be a part of that moment, whether it's 2024, 2084, 1934, or 1634. I want people to feel something when they look at my work. And a part of that is being able to use, whether it's visuals or words, to envelop, if you will, the user, the participant, like a blanket, so that their feeling is not always joy, but that they are feeling and tapping into their own emotions, and to make the most obscure topic relatable. I hope that helps.
Well, yes. No, it did, absolutely, because it gets me to the film that you did called Zoo. And I had read that how it came about in part was the fact that you saw a photo and it grabbed your attention. So as you were describing, what does it mean to be a visual archaeologist is to feel something. And this particular photo, you definitely felt something, and then you made a film. So tell me a little bit about the photo and how this film came about.
It was one of those things, Sandra, that I think was just divine. I was trolling Twitter, but when it was Twitter, several years ago, 2013, to be exact. And I saw this picture of a little girl, and one side was a little girl and the other side was an ape. And the subtext said,
An ape.
mhm, and the subtext said a human zoo, and said that the on the left, the photo on the left was of they likened the little girl to an ape. And I had a knee-jerk reaction. First of all,
Absolutely.
human zoo,
Absolutely.
what's that? I'm in my
Right. Yeah,
40s.
that's
And I'm like, how come I never learned about this in school? And I immediately saw a vision. And, I say it came from God because I'm just not sure where something like that could have come from outside of it. Uh,
right.
I am a faith person. And so it downloaded literally like on papyrus. And I saw everything. everything, every nuance. And I said, this has got to be a short film. Now, I've had self-published a couple of books, but I didn't really know anything
Mhm.
about screenwriting. As a matter of fact, I was intimidated by it because it's such a rigorous discipline. When you write, you have a
Yes.
lot of real estate, but a
Mhm.
good screenwriting is precise. It's almost scientific in a way, using poetry and prose. And, yeah, so
Mhm. Yes.
um,
Because it has to jump off the page without having that
it
image
has to jump correct. And there's
in order for somebody to say, "Okay, yes, I'm gonna make this
yes,
film." Right.
but I didn't doubt for a
Mhm.
minute that for this particular message, for people to learn more about it, that it had to be a film. And so I just set about it. I, went to a retreat in Costa Rica for screenwriters, and I did a lot of research. As my screenwriting teacher would say, you can teach you can teach a monkey to write a screenplay, but the elements that they taught us, like meditative writing and understanding that with every character we write, that's from within. They had
Mhm.
hypnosis for writers. So it was a type of environment where, it was just a few of us. We were in the jungle in Costa Rica. It wasn't the glamorous Costa Rica that people may think about. Um, and everything was big. We had to watch out for the crocodiles and, it was bananas, bats flying around. But we would have yoga in the
I'm not sure why I chose Costa Rica, but
morning.
it sounds like you did get a
I
lot out of it,
did.
including
Oh
crocodiles.
my gosh, but, it's also a way to embrace your fear and to harness it. And so out of that, the script was written. You learn so many lessons when you're especially when you're doing independent film and, at this point, I was earning them on people who had, my dime, people who had contributed, but what you have in your head versus what goes on the page versus what is shot versus what is edited versus what is the final product are like, ugh. Hopefully they're not too different, but they're going to be different just by the very nature of this business and the way storytelling goes. But I have to tell you that this film has so many legs, and I'm really fortunate. It is still on the film festival circuit. Most films die
That's
after a couple of
wonderful.
years, but Zoo Voca Show continues to live globally, and I feel really blessed.
And now, were you a member of WIFV by now at this point?
I was because Kimberly Skirm at the time was the casting director, and she had introduced me to Melissa Houghton, and because of Kimberly, I was able to get a couple of cast members for Zoo Voca Show. So yes, I was. It's been a while.
Mhm.
Yes.
Right. And you actually did meet somebody through another film festival who actually spoke German who added to this film. The realism added to that from what I read.
Oh, Donna. Well, interestingly enough, she didn't speak German, but she did. I met her at the
Oh,
Annapolis Film
okay.
Festival. Um,
Oh,
and
okay. All right
she
then.
took upon herself to like really challenge herself because I said, I want I want this to feel global. Like we shot it in my backyard, right? So it's supposed to represent Germany, 1958. How do we do that? So I thought that speaking in different languages would add to the authenticity of being at a World's Fair
Right.
in 1958. So
Mhm.
yeah, she spoke with her friends who were German to make sure she had her intonation correct. And yeah, that was Donna. Yeah, great. That was a good connection. Yeah.
Wow, all of that for a short film that's still on the film circuit. Congratulations,
Thank
Monda.
you.
That's
Oh,
fantastic.
yeah, I just think that, the concept of a human zoo, although they haven't had any legally since then, um, I do believe that the concept of a human zoo is still in play. And I mean, we're seeing it play out in a sense in politics this very day. And really, the overall crux of the film is for us to look at one another as equals, look at one another as human, and that's my tagline. Let's all be human, right? And so that message doesn't change, unfortunately, right? Yeah,
Right.
humanity,
Humanity. Be the best you can in your humanity.
absolutely.
Mhm. That's
We
so
would
true.
be in a much better place, I think. And I used children for a reason, and children are so pure. A lot of times we're taught hate, we're taught prejudice, But if you look at things from the eyes of a child, the purity, and the openness, and the love that I just, coupled with our common sense and mother wit, that the world really would be a better place.
Well, speaking of film festival, I read that you've served as a juror on a numerous film festivals from Maryland to France, and then you also were a juror on the NAACP Image Awards. So I guess one, how did that come about? And if other people are interested in being a juror, how does someone go about doing that for people who are watching this podcast and for members of WIFV?
Sandra, it is primarily I've been asked, and there are some film festivals that I still, to this day, annually serve as a juror. But that's I don't think there's a book or any type of how do you become a juror for a film festival.
Right. That's why I thought I need to ask you this question because I said, "Oh, that sounds really interesting."
Well,
So
okay, I'll tell you a couple of things. When I attend a festival, I throw my whole self into it. I try to go to as many screenings as I can if I meet the filmmakers to support them. As storytellers, we really just want to tell our stories to others and have them appreciate it. Whether we want to make you laugh, cry, or think, we just want other people to see it. And I'm very intentional about that. And when I ask questions, I'm very thoughtful about those questions. And so perhaps others look and say, "Oh, well, maybe she would be a good person to," it's a really interesting question because I've never asked anyone why they asked me to be a juror other than, okay, or maybe I don't have time. But I really do love the arts. I respect and I think
mhm.
it takes a lot of courage. And, one of my favorite quotes, Nina Simone mentioned it when she said, "The duty of an artist is to reflect the times." And, I
Mhm. That's a fabulous quote from Nina Simone. Fabulous, fabulous.
so I look to reflect those times in my actions and in my words and in what I feel is part of my duty as an artist. That may not help others, but I would say if I were to think from a strategic standpoint, how can I do something like this? Is to get to know the curators of the festivals and build a relationship with them, right? A sincere one. Um, and ask. Perhaps you say, people are always looking for people to be jurors, right? And just ask. I love this festival. I've been attending it for X amount of years. I really think that my opinion may be helpful, and I would love to volunteer my time, right? So I just think that the building of relationships and establishing that trust is a really important part in in life, in anything, right? But especially if you want to get involved in something like this.
I read that you are the executive vice president and festival programming coordinator for the Chesapeake Film Festival. What is special about that particular festival?
The Chesapeake Film Festival, I got involved, again, a little over 9 years ago as an attendee, and I really appreciated the way that the, festival curators treated the filmmakers. I felt very special, and we talked about it, and I gave her feedback, like, "This is great, I've been to several festivals, but this one stood out because of these particular factors." And so in the past few years, I have helped to, if I saw a film that I thought might be a good fit, Chesapeake is an Eastern Shore, very historic part of Maryland, as well as the environmental, just beautiful country. And I'm like, well, I think maybe I can help. I can bring some diverse films here. And part of my ilk is to ensure that the voiceless have a voice. So whether that voiceless be disabled, LGBTQ plus, minorities, I'm here for it, right? And so to be able to bring that kind of aspect into the programming gives it more dimension, if you will. And I enjoy it. I truly do. We've had some good films.
Absolutely, that's wonderful. So I think they had their film festival recently, so we've got another year to go before the next one
Yes.
for next year for 2025.
Yes.
So, but not only are you involved in film, but you're also involved in poetry. So tell us that you performed poetry. So because I said that in the beginning, you're a performance artist. So I was like, okay, that's unusual for some of our WIFV members. So tell us about the poetry.
Well, it's, another form of storytelling, right? So I, I've been writing since I was about 8 or 9, and so I have 2 poetry books that I've self-published. One is called A Peek Into My Soul, and the other is Life is Like a Soul Train Line.
Soul Train. I remember that show.
And I was, oh gosh, I don't know, somewhere in my 20s when I started thinking about my mortality, and I said, well, if I did have, if I was going to be eulogized, what would that look like? And I thought about the things that I really loved, and I didn't have anything to show for it. And instead of having excuses like, oh, I don't have enough money, or I was like, I'm just going to write. I'm just going to publish a poetry book, right? And so the first time I published it was to have something on the books in case I passed. And then the second time I
Oh,
published, I know
no.
it sounds morbid, but it was really a fun experience. And I mean, I took poems that I had written on napkins, and back in the day, I didn't even have a typewriter. You just wrote, and
Well, some people listening may not even know what a typewriter is. So
like this, like you do on the computer, young people.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, so
Right.
I put together Peek Into My Soul, and then Life is Like a Soul Train Line, which is, it's really just an encapsulation of life in all of its forms, life, love, and those lessons, that we learn as we mature. And I do perform on occasion, and so I'm going to be looking to make one of my poems into a performance piece that was in the memory of George Floyd. And so hopefully that'll be edited by sometime in the spring, and I'll be able to share it with you. I just enjoy it.
Wow, that's really fantastic that you're doing something. Is this new? Have you talked to anybody else about this piece that you're doing? And it's about George Floyd, or it's in memory of him?
It's dedicated to him. It's dedicated
Dedicated
to
to
him, and
him.
it looks at our history as a whole, about us becoming better people, um, and learning from the mistakes that we made in the past. But a part of that learning is accepting bad behavior and wanting to change it, right? And to reconcile that, and then to heal, especially when it comes to Black and white relations and Indigenous people in this country.
Well, speaking of relations, one of the things I read was during the pandemic, you curated a monthly discussion series entitled The Healing Chronicles. And I thought, we've talked about, because of the pandemic, a lot of talk about mental health and self care and tips. And tell us, what did you learn and what can you share from, the Healing Chronicles that you learned about mental health and self care?
That series, can I just say, Sandra, how you feel helpless about certain things, and the pandemic impacted us all, um, and it manifested in different ways. And so I said to myself, I want to do something. I'm not quite sure what, but I want to do something that I think can uplift people. And then I had this idea about the Healing Chronicles, and to be able to look at topics that maybe is actual a visual manifestation of saying the quiet part out loud, right? People are still asking for it, but it just took a lot out of me, to produce it, and I'm technologically okay. I'm like maybe a B minus C, but I think that that concept for a show could go a lot further. But it was created with so that participants could feel safe, could feel as if we're in one another's living rooms, and we're talking about those things that may be considered taboo, but are necessary to address in order to move forward. Ruth Ginsburg said before she died so prolifically, like, how are we going to talk? How are we going to talk about race relations and not mention race? It wasn't an exact quote, right? That's not an exact quote, but we got to we got to be able to turn this thing on its head, and we have to be honest about it. If not, what's the purpose? And again, we're seeing
Right.
a lot of this play out when it comes to our gender in
Hmm.
a big
Yes.
way.
Hmm.
This election,
Right.
but we got to be honest about it.
Hmm. Right.
Women are dying.
Absolutely. Absolutely. No, there was, 2 people in Texas, an 18-year-old. Yes. It's
We have to be honest about it, and we
beyond
have
words.
to understand and own our power, that we're not helpless. We are in a world that is considered a superpower in a nation. So, so that's just, I mean, I'm pretty much a happy-go-lucky person, but I do believe that it is a part of my calling to be able to bring these things to the surface in an artistic form and educate, entertain, and uplift all of us, because we're all kind of broken in a way, right, from something. So we see it in one another and we acknowledge it and we embrace the light and we lift one another. Like, this is what we have to do. That's what I believe.
Absolutely. No, you're so right on that. And speaking of what you're doing going forward, you have another short film that you're doing, Mother Knows Best. And is that the one where our current president of WIFV, Connie St. John, was part of your crew?
Yes.
So Connie goes, I'm gonna help Monda with her film.
I'm so grateful for Connie. I was approached to direct it a couple of years ago. And Mother Knows Best, basically, in a nutshell, is about an embittered Italian widow who has a 30 something truly failure to launch son, who is engaged to a Jewish woman. And when she finds out, she hits the ceiling, because the way she grew up, you do not, those are things you do not do. She is not one of them. And she pulls out, she's not Italian, and she pulls out all the stops in order to break up this engagement. But we find out that you know, she's got a past and she's got lots of skeletons in her closet as well. And it's because she's buried those skeletons without addressing them, acknowledging them, and
Mhm.
healing.
Right.
It's made her a miserable person, and it touches everyone that she comes in contact with until it doesn't. So,
So
yes.
well, what's going on now? Like, which stage of the filming process are you for? When is this something that people can expect to see soon or
Yeah,
next
next
year?
year for
What's
sure.
going
So
on with it?
we have the final edit is in, and the media kit is done. So we're going to be uploading.
That's
Yeah, oh yeah, I can share
fantastic.
that too with you. So next year, and I'll probably work with Connie, Women in Film and Video, to do a diverse showcase at American Film Institute. I did one a few years ago, and so we can show that in other films from different voices across the U.S. and maybe overseas as well. We'll see. But the plan is for it to do a festival circuit run, and then we'll kind of figure out what distribution might look like and who might be the best entity to distribute it.
That's wonderful. And how long did it take from the time you started writing the script to the time you actually, opened up that camera lens and said, "Okay, action"?
Well, the person who bought it to me, there was a script, but I looked at it and I said, "Please, I beg of you, can I start from scratch?" But she's like, "I trust you, Monda. Go right ahead." So to answer your question, it took about 9 months. I think, yeah, we had 10 versions of it until until we shot, and that was in June 20. We're in 2024, so we shot in June 22. Very low budget, but for me, if it's social impact, I'm like, we don't have to have a lot of money to make a statement, right? And again, we're talking about humanity. Let's all be human. Uh, and just because we learn something and grow with it doesn't mean it's necessarily the right thing. So we have a responsibility to ourselves to question it. We know the difference between right and wrong. So, and yes, there's always gray area, but that Mother Knows Best does address that. And I think that people are going to enjoy it. It's some tough language, but overall, I think they're going to enjoy it.
Well, I keep hearing the word humanity, be our best selves, diversity, these key words I'm hearing, and throughout talking to you. And I guess one of the questions I had was, what do you want people to take away from your films, your books, your poetry? And I have an idea, but maybe you can just articulate it a little bit further, pull that thread a little more and flush it out for all of us.
I would say from a granular standpoint, in a loving kind of auntie way, I just want to leave you better than I found you, whatever that looks like. Um, Not in a huge ego way, but in a way that you've been touched, and if there is something that needs to change, that you would want to make that change. You know, if it's something that you didn't know, now you know, right? And I really want to imbue you with joy that when it's all said and done, when we're loving on one another, there is joy and gratitude for just being here. People have so much going on from a health perspective, from a financial perspective, from fractured family relations. There's always something going on. But, if we look at the bright spots and we continue to focus on that bright spot, it's just going to get bigger.
That's all we can do these days. So, Monda, I wanted to ask you before we go, you have talked about your films, you talked about the Chesapeake Bay Film Festival. Is there any particular website or social media handle that you want to share with people if people want more information?
Well, I'm on Instagram under Monda Raquel Webb. And I'm a multi hyphenate, so you might I sell real estate, so you might see any number of things on that when I post, you know. But Chesapeake Film Festival, you can Google that, and Women in Film and Video, of course. I love this organization. I'm enamored with it, and I respect it wholeheartedly for all of its years of service, and that we continue to grow and touch women and men nationwide, really. Even though we're Women in Film and Video DC, we do touch folks all over this country and throughout the world. So I'm proud.
We're proud to have you as a board member as well on Women in Film and Video. So thank you, Monda. Thank you, Monda, so much for joining the Media Maker Spotlight podcast.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to Media Maker Spotlight from Women in Film and Video. To learn more about WIFV, visit F as in Frank, V as in Victor.org. This podcast is created by Sandra Abrams, Candace Block, Brandon Ferry, Tara Jabari, and Jerry Reinhardt, and edited by Michelle Kim and Inez Perez, with audio production and mix by Steve Lack Audio. Subscribe to continue learning from more amazing media makers. Please visit MediaMakerSpotlight.com for more information.